You may be seated. Officiating today's service will be Rabbi Yitzchak Brody. Once again, if you're just walking in, please take a moment to turn your cell phone on silent.
We'll start with Psalm 23. I'll say it in Hebrew, and then afterwards in English. Mizmor David Adonai Roi Le'achzar bin Eis Desha Yar Bitzeni Al Mei Menuchas Yinaleni Nafshi Yeshovev Yancheni B'Magle Tzedek L'man Shemoi Gam Ki Elech B'Geitz Al Moves La'ira Ra Ki Ato Imadi Shiftechu Meshantecha He Menachamuni Tarich L'fanei Shulchan Neged Tzoreroi Di Shanta V'Hashem Roishi Kaisi Revaya Ach Tov V'Chesed Yedefuni Koim Echai V'Shavti B'Veis Adonai L'Erech Yamim. A psalm by David. Hashem is my shepherd, I shall not lack. In lush meadows he lays me down, beside tranquil waters he leads me. He restores my soul, he leads me on paths of justice for his name's sake. Though I walk in the valley overshadowed by death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in view of my tormentors. You anointed my head with oil, my cup overflows. May only goodness and kindness pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of Hashem for long days. The custom is to say Eshes Chayil, which is the description by King Solomon of the woman of valor, of the quintessential Jewish woman. We'll say it in Hebrew, and then we'll say a few verses in English. Eshes Chayil miyimtze v'rachik mipnine michra, batach ba leiv baila v'shala leyachzar, Gmalsu Tei V'Leira Koyme Chayaha Dosh Etzemer Pishtin V'Tas B'Chefetz Kapeha Hoyse Kinei Seicher Mimerchek Tavi Lachma V'Atokim Bo'ei Laila V'Titin Tev Levesi V'Chokin Arasel Zoma Sera V'Tikacheu Mipricha Pernot Echarem Chagre Bo'ez Masneha V'Tamid Zreiseha Toma Kitev Sachar L'Yich V'Belal Nera Yadil Shilcha B'Kisher V'Chapeh Tom Chofalach Kappa first leoni v'eder shilch le'evyon l'sir le'ves mishalag ki cholves alav ashanim. Marvad demasas Allah sheish v'argam levusha noide bashar m'bayla b'shiftim zikna aretz sadan osla v'timkar v'chagor nasna l'kanani oiz v'hadr levusha v'tischak l'yem acharoin pia pascha b'chachma v'seres chesed al l'shayna tzefia lichais beisa v'lechem aslus le'seichel choma v'nev yashua bayla v'yhalala Rabbis Banis Asu Chayil At Alis Al Kolana Shakar Chain Vehevel Hayefi Yishiras Adonai Hisis Halal Tnula Mipriyada Vihalua Bashar Maseha. Many daughters have amassed achievement, but you surpass them all. False is grace and vain is beauty. A God-fearing woman, she should be praised. Give her the fruits of her hand and let her be praised in the gates by her very own deeds. The purpose of the eulogy is to highlight the virtues of the deceased, which in turn brings these words and these her mitzvahs, her traits, her laudworthy traits, they're brought up to God, so to speak, and it ushers her in to be in the presence of God and to achieve her tranquility and in her final resting place. The Chafetz Chaim, Rabbi Yisrael Meir Kagan, the legendary pre-war leader of world Jewry, known as the Chafetz Chaim, he makes a comment on a verse in this week's Torah portion, and he says, the verse reads in Hebrew, Ishes Kadoshav Lo Yiyah, which means in English, a person's holies are to them alone. And in a literal sense, what that means is when a person consecrates some of his possessions for charity or to give to a Kohen, a priest, so he decides which charity to go to, which Kohen, which priest to give it to. But the Chafetz Chaim explains that homiletically, and he says as follows: Ishes Kadesh V'Liyah. When a person does many things, a person does many different things in his lifetime, he has different accomplishments. He buys a house, he owns cars. She works on many different levels and many different things that seem very important. But ultimately, when a person goes up, when a person ascends to heaven, after his time is up, what goes with him is Ish Es Kadesha, which means his holiness, meaning the time that he spent doing mitzvahs, the time that he spent being kind to others, the kindnesses that he did, the mitzvahs that he did, the charity that he gave, and the kindness that she bestowed upon others. That's what goes up with them, and that's what escorts them to heaven. And that's what helps them achieve closeness to God, and it brings them up until they're enveloped and embraced by God on his heavenly throne. Shari was a woman who went to shul throughout her life. She went to shul, she went to services, she attended services throughout her life. She maintained that connection to God. She went to classes, Hebrew classes throughout her life, always seeking to upgrade her knowledge of Judaism and her understanding of God's place in her life. She stood behind her sons in a supportive role as they began their quest to attain a new level of religious observance. And she stood behind and supported them and was proud of them. She left many lights. She lit many small lights along the way of kindness that she did to others. She's known to all as a very sweet person, a very kind person, a very giving person. And that kindness and that sweetness, all those mitzvahs, all those little lights that she left behind will now ascend with her and then morph into the angels which are going to bear her aloft into her paradise. She is very supportive, she's very close. We know that many times a mother-in-law, daughter-in-law relationship is not so simple, doesn't always work out that great. But she's very supportive of Bruch and Naomi, very supportive, very close to them. She helped them whenever she could. She loved them. She did everything she could with it to help them and their children. They provided her with a tremendous amount of simcha, of happiness. And when she got the news of her diagnosis, which would cause most people to unravel emotionally, she met it with equanimity. And she was calm, which is a reflection of her faith, that she knew she's in the hands of God no matter what happens. And that's how she's able to meet such a terrible prognosis with such calmness and serenity. Shari lived till 72 years old. 72 is a number which is very significant in the writings of Jewish mystics. And 72 is the number of letters in the ineffable name, which was said on the holiest day of the year on Yom Kippur, in the holiest place on earth, in the Holy of Holies, by the holiest man, the high priest. He would say that name then of 72 letters. And it's indicative of the kind of life that she led, a life of purity, a life of happiness. And of course, 72 is also 4 times 18. 18 is the numerical value of chai, of life. And the Gemara says, the Talmud tells us that 4 times you master something. You do something 4 times, you master it. She mastered life. She knew how to give to others. She knew how to make other people happy. And she knew what counted. We'll end with the pasuk, the verses in this week's parsha, which is the priestly blessing, which in Israel is said every day. In the diaspora, it's said only on the holidays. We said it 2 days ago, on Tuesday and Wednesday, on Monday and Tuesday, Shavuos. Yivrechecha, Hashem v'yishmerecha. Hashem should bless you and safeguard you. Yor Hashem panav elecha v'chunaka. God should show you his countenance and show you graciousness. Yisa Hashem panav elecha v'seim l'cha shalom. God should lift up his face towards you and give you everlasting peace. And we'll end the pasuk, which is customarily ended, every eulogy ends with Ubila Maves Netzach. When the Messiah comes, Ubila Maves Netzach, death will be swallowed forever. Umach Hashem dim me'al kol panim, and God will wipe the tears of all faces forever. Jonathan.
A stranger looking at my mother would notice a well-dressed, elegant woman with a kind, soft-spoken manner. Her kind and courteous demeanor, combined with her smile and wry, joking manner, would always leave behind a pleasing impression. A friend of my mother's would be drawn to her quick wit, wry humor, and intelligent discussion. My mother's kindness and great gentleness alone would have made her an ideal friend. But any friendship with my mother was elevated by her love of learning new things. She learned languages, attended lectures, voraciously devoured plays and musicals, tried new recipes, and explored the world around her in a quiet but profound way. She was also quite the words with friends player. Those of us in my mother's inner circle, her siblings, her children and grandchildren, were privileged to enjoy the full, dazzling Shari experience. Her quiet love amassed an inner strength that no strangers or friends could have ever guessed at. She made difficult decisions in her life and sacrificed so much for her beloved family. A casual observer might perceive my mother to be a pliant reed, buffeted by the storms of her life. The truth was quite different. She had a backbone of steel, protecting those she loved to the best of her ability. She made up her mind and achieved difficult goals that would have made others give up years before she did. Her family had to bear witness to these feats of strength because you would never hear a word of complaint about the burden she had to bear. We watched her move mountains in her quiet way. She was a perfect parent and grandparent. She was an immediate presence if you needed her, helping in her quiet way. She cooked and cleaned, held crying grandchildren for hours, bought bagels and Broadway shows, and was a tireless helping hand when you needed her. My mother would never meddle and would offer her gentle opinion only if you asked. She was proud of her family and quietly helped all of us achieve substantial life goals, whether it be our education, families, or getting us settled into adult life. She was Old Faithful, always there when and where you needed her. Those in my mother's orbit would also be fortunate to enjoy her wry sense of humor and hilarious Yiddish phrases. She could quote any Jackie Mason routine and found humor in the most absurd situations. She chattered and told lively stories and was always fun to talk to. There was only one battle my quiet, gentle mother lost, and that was her fight with cancer. But she didn't go easily. It took cancer 2 years to stop. My strong mother. My mother's strength was almost superhuman. She walked to and from her cancer treatments by herself because COVID deprived her of a companion for treatment. She was strong until a few weeks ago and was still joking on the phone as late as last week. She said that she had to go and make some tea because there was a frog in her throat. My mother leaves behind 2 sons and a beloved daughter, 5 grandsons, her sister, brother-in-law, niece, and 4 nephews. We will live the rest of our lives inspired by her quiet strength and kindness. It was this strength and kindness that made our lives possible. My sister Danielle has mirrored the strength and kindness of my mother in the past 2 difficult years, helping and caring for a mother alone, know and I owe you a debt of gratitude that can never be repaid. We thought we had all the time in the world because cancer couldn't possibly beat Mom. How could we have known?
My mom was the sweetest person I ever met. She was my mommy. She was when I turned to when I was little and was scared, and when I got bigger and scared, and now she's gone. She loved us unconditionally, and she was always there for me. She was a calming influence in a life that could sometimes be chaotic. The world's a little darker today because she's gone, but it's a little brighter because of her influence in it, and the legacy she leaves behind. She was Zoket of 5 grandsons who were all being raised with Torah, mitzvahs, and Yiras Shamayim. And she was a proud bubby, and she had much nachas from having both her daughters pregnant at the same time the last year. My siblings and I are very different people, but she was always able to relate to us each on our own level. Sorry. She was always a mommy, and I never stopped being that little boy who would constantly ask her which sock was her right sock and which was the left sock when I was little. And when I did the search for my own wife, she was a woman who I compared every girl to. The Gemara in Yevamos Daf 117 says a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law don't always get along. It's a naturally conflicting relationship. That wasn't true here. My mom looked at my sister-in-law as a woman that raised her kids, her grandkids, as a woman that every single day was up early, taking care of them. So when she saw them, she said, "You need a break. I'll take care of them. I'll help them." And my sister-in-law was grateful for the help. You know, she told me one time she liked my mom more than my brother. So, and with my own wife too. My own wife, when she came into the family, she was so happy. And when I would call my mom to wish her good Shabbos, every week she'd say, "I want to talk to Bruchi." And she talked to Bruchi, and then hang up the phone and forget that I was still there. And while I have this audience for my sister-in-law and my wife, I want to thank you both so much because you made my mom so happy. I never saw her as happy as she was the last year of her life. Even though she had Yana Machla, she was so happy, and it's a big part because of you two, and it means a lot to me and to our kids and my nephews. Well, not Orthodox. My mother was a traditional Jew in her Jewish beliefs. She never ate bacon. She never had basar v'chalav. She was a shul regularly before COVID and was well liked in her shul and attended many classes there. My brother and I decided to become more religious, a traditional Orthodox way of life. She was always supportive. I loved spending Shabbos with my brothers with her, when I was single. And I looked forward to having those Shabbos with her now that I'm married with my own family. But I'll never have those. My son will never know his bubby. The last time I saw my mom before this recent trip was with my Shavar Brachas in Flatbush, my wife's family. And even though they're a very boisterous family and they have their own great, amazing personalities and can be intense, my mom had a great time and they all loved her and thought she was so sweet. This time I want to ask Mechila, it's my mother, for anything I did that may have upset her during her lifetime. I'm very sorry for anything if I may have hurt you or caused you pain in any way. When my mom got sick, she was nonchalant. In fact, she sent me a text message saying, and I quote, I got bad results, but not terrible. It was Yana Machal, but she didn't think of it as that big of a deal. She never seemed scared. In fact, when I would call her on the phone to see how she was doing, it wasn't about her. She'd tell me that my cousin wasn't doing well or somebody else was sick, and she made sure that I always knew the Hebrew names of my cousins or other relatives so I can daven for them. When 3 months ago, I joined an amazing club called Fatherhood. I was so excited for my mom to meet my son, to hold him in her arms, to see him play with his cousins, but she never had the chance. One thing about being a father that I've noticed is that all my wife does for our young son, he's young to appreciate. He doesn't know that she's the one staying up with him, changing his diapers, making him laugh. And I know my mom did the same thing for me and my siblings, and we were too young to appreciate that. I want to close with a story I heard from Rav Yaakov Mizrahi recently that really resonated with me personally. He told a story recently about his own being a father and how his own kid would cry every night for a bottle, and his wife would run to make a bottle and he'd hold him. And I have the same situation. Every night, I'll turn around and wake up, my baby's crying, my wife's in the other room making a bottle. So I go to play with him and hold him, and he's crying. And it's very weird because 2 hours later, 2 hours before he had a bottle, 2 hours before that he had a bottle. He's had plenty of bottles. He knows my wife's going to give him a bottle. And more so, he knows that his father's holding him, his father's playing with him. And now, right now, I know that's hard, my mom not being here, but my Father in heaven, he's holding me, and he knows that I'm here. I miss my mom.
I just wanted to thank everyone for coming. The texts and the messages really meant a lot. So this past year has been incredibly difficult. My mom was my best friend. And even at my age of 35, I still like to wear matching outfits with her. And when I bought my condo, I made sure I was less than a mile away from her so that I could be coming over anytime. I'm grateful now that she's at peace and not suffering. She fought hard. It was a long battle and very difficult. I'm just really proud of her. She was a lover of Scrabble, Law and Order, and baking, and the originator of purse snacks, and always reminded me to bring a jacket. So I will miss her as well.
We'll say now a prayer for the soul, which is said at the end of the service. Hamsemenu Khanakhina kan Feshkina b'Malas Kedoshim Torim Kezara Kia Masirim Es Nishma Shalamis Miriam Bas Avram Shalchalama Bavosha Nedvim Tzedaka Baras Karas Nishmasa Beganeden Taimnu Chasa Lechein Barachamim Yasira B'Sezach Nafav Leilamim Yitzur B'Tzrachim Es Nishmasa Adonai Hu Nachalasa B'Senuach HaMishkava B'Shalayim V'Naimar Amen.
We're going to ask everybody to please rise. With the short one. The short one, right? I mean, this guy was only about a grade.
Yeah.
Okay. This concludes our service here at the chapel. Interment will follow at the family's plot at West Lawn Cemetery. For those of us joining in procession to the cemetery, we're going to be forming in the parking lot. Please make sure you obtain an orange safety sticker for the inside windshield portion of your car, as well as a magnetic flag to be placed on top of your roof of your car. For an additional measure of safety, a car will be riding in the back of the procession. Please try and maintain as close a space to the car in front of you as possible, especially when passing through intersections. Please use your horn liberally. Again, on behalf of the family, I'd like to thank everybody who's joining us online. Shiva will be this evening. That information is on ChicagoJewishFunerals.com, along with memorial contributions in Shari's memory made out to the American Cancer Society. At this point, I'm going to ask everybody to rise one more time as we escort the casket, the rabbi, and the family from the chapel.